Listen, thank you guys, because y'all have traveled, and I appreciate your time. You're coming from Orange County, you're coming from Orlando, you're coming way from Lake Wales, Florida. And I love it. Hey, you see the Lake Wales, Michael? Winter Haven. Okay, he's like, neither one of them Winter Haven. All I did was come from Winter Haven. But I truly appreciate your dedication. I appreciate your commitment to this show. And so we're going to get right into it. We know that the third principle of the comeback formula is to do the necessary work. How many of you out there are putting in the work? Clap your hands, make some noise, make some noise. If you are putting in the work, you have to put in the work diligently. Faith without works is dead. We all know that. So we're just going to start right down the line. Mr. Gerren Sprauve, tell us what you consider to be your comeback story, sir.
Imagine being 7 years old. Is this working? No. Imagine being 7 years old. You go to the doctor and you end up with some weird sickness and you get pneumonia. Shortly thereafter, you get polio and you become paralyzed. I'm 7 years old. I can't speak. I can't walk. I can't talk. I can't sit up. My eyes are crossed. Life is different really, really fast. I go to Puerto Rico to the Children's Hospital. I can't speak the language. For several weeks I'm there. And then finally one day I'm able to slide into my wheelchair and I roll myself out into the hallway. I roll down the hallway and as I look to my left and to my right, I see kids in their rooms.
Check.
And all I did to them was I invited them out into the hallway. And those kids slid off their beds, got into their wheelchairs, and all of a sudden we're all riding down the hallway, racing in our wheelchairs. We're laughing. Everybody's putting smiles on their faces. The nurses are all enjoying it, seeing all these kids. Okay, fast forward. I don't have to get any therapy. I'm normal. And several years later, I suffered from sexual abuse. This is all before the age of 10. Now this person, a family member, I love them. When they finally stop, I feel rejection. I define that moment in my life as rejection. And from that point on, anyone that shows me any kind of affection or love, I reject them because I know you're going to reject me first. I lived this life for the next, 30 plus years. But I go to college. And when I go to college, I get a job at a Chinese store, a kite store. And everyone in the warehouse, they're Chinese-speaking individuals. I become a stock clerk. I walk into the room, and I ask the boss, what do you need me to do? And he says, I just need you to work with the team. These are all Chinese-speaking people. Within 6 months, I become a manager of the warehouse. I don't speak Chinese, just like I didn't speak Spanish. But because of something within me, I'm able to connect with these people in some interesting way. Fast forward, I'm married. I'm still dealing with this whole issue of rejection. And anytime you show me any measure of love or affection, I reject you. I'm leaving a wake of destruction. But there's something about me and people. I love people. I'm an ambassador for people. I connect with people, but I reject people. Why is the question I ask. Until I go to therapy. Any of you guys ever been to therapy? Big 6'4", 265-pound dude going to therapy. It's not always a sexy thing. But something major happened in my life where I had to make a decision. Am I going to grow or am I going to remain here? It was because of therapy I can actually call that thing that happened to me as a kid sexual abuse. My identity was stripped from me early on in my age. But as a result of something traumatic happening in my home and me having to go to therapy or choosing to go to therapy, everything changes. And finally, I can start redefining moments in my life that has caused me pain, redefining moments that I have chosen to look at things that doesn't serve me well, and now put a bow, a ribbon, something beautiful on it, and it's just awesome. I have finally reclaimed my identity, so I can stand before you or sit with a smile on my face, looking at my past, not feeling guilt or shame, but actually looking at it as a wonderful, wonderful experience. And the businesses that I've started and the things that I've done over the years, they've all been a catalyst to help me grow my character. All I want to be is a better human. No matter what business I'm in, no matter what business I start, whatever stage I'm on, I just want to be a better human. So everything I go through is to help build my character. If there's one thing I'm going to leave you with in this segment is you are the greatest asset ever. I want you to know that. I want you to hold on to that. I want you to believe that. And if there's any moment in your life where you have been struggling with, I want you to know that you have an opportunity to redefine it in a way that's powerful so that you can live the life that you deserve. That is my message to you right now.
Absolutely. Absolutely, absolutely. So listen, and you definitely, each guest on this panel does have an incredible journey, an incredible story. But when I tell you they are definitely putting in the work, and we're gonna dive into that, they really, really are. Mr. Michael Mariner, you are our second panelist on this panel. Tell me what you consider to be your comeback story so that everyone knows who you are.
I would say my comeback story would be that of resilience. When you look at my brand, it was all God-breathed. Shift motivations. Pretty much a lot of the things that were talked about today I've experienced loss in a lot of different areas. And it's probably started when I was about 17, 18. Lost my mom at 21. And anybody that knew my mom, they knew that she was an intercessor. I mean, I'm trying to sleep and go to school. She up praying 2 or 3 o'clock in the morning. I'm trying to sleep. Mama in there walking the floor. But them prayers kept me out of some bad accidents. And I come home one day and I stop in the middle of the living room. She stops, she greets me. And just out of the blue, because I know my mom, she don't do nothing, she don't ask nothing just to do it. Yeah. So she say, well, son, what do you want to do? I said, Mom, I don't know. And then she asked me again, she said, well, son, what do you want to do? I said, Mom, I don't know. By the third time she asked me, it's like God just spoke through me. I want to be an entrepreneur. Now back then, I didn't know what an entrepreneur was. I could barely spell an entrepreneur, let alone try to become one. But she looked at me, she just said, okay, and just walked off. And I think that kind of sparked something because I've been on the chase ever since. Because just trying to better myself, anybody ever felt like, it's like every time I take one step forward, it feels like I'm taking 12 back? That's the story of my life. It's like, so I found myself, we got married, I was 21, she was 22, and you know, where we come from, certain things we just weren't taught. And so we bought a house, but it didn't start out that way. Yeah. So we was like, oh, go get an apartment. She was like, well, let's go get an apartment. I would say, well, you know what? Let's see if we can go get a house first. Let's see if we can go get a house first. Then if we can't get in a house, then we'll go settle for an apartment. That was all God breathed. Long story short, we ended up getting a house. Anybody remember the hurricanes back in 2004? Okay, we thought we had escaped. The last one took us out. Yeah. That was one of my first shifts. And so we ended up buying her a new car, and I met a salesman. And he's like, man, I like your personality. Have you ever considered sales? I said, no, because I like knowing what I'm going to make at the end of the week. I said, I ain't with no commission stuff. I know how to budget, and I ain't with that. He's like, you sure? I was like, yeah. And then I was always raised, treat people right, work hard, and everything else to take care of itself. And so be honest and stuff like that. And so I was always up in leadership positions. Never realized it as a young man. But things started to click as I had this quote that said, success leaves clues, pay attention. Because everything's always leading you somewhere. And so I was like, I got snuffed on a couple opportunities that were supposed to be mine. Because, back then you got a raise, they want to give you a quarter, nickel, dime, they want to, all that type of stuff. So I got tired of it, so I made a call to Mr. Salesman. I said, hey, man, that position still open? He's like, yeah, we'd love to have you. I said, let's do it. So long story short, man, I ended up getting fired. Didn't last 30 days. That sales class was probably one of the largest that came through that sales door. The crazy thing was I was the top 5 out of that class in sales. Still got fired. Me and the sales manager didn't get along because he was unethical. We did a drive with an older young lady, right? Older young lady. And we get back to the car lot. Because I was already looking for a job. God just already helped me along the way. We get to the car lot. The car starts smoking. I said, I know he ain't fit to try to sell this lady this car. Guess what he tried to do? Sell lady. I said, I know I got to go now. So anyways, I ended up getting fired. Great support with this young lady right here. That's my heartbeat. And I was out of work, sis, for a long time. You know, the money was starting to run out. And God led me to sow a seed months prior to. Me and my cousin was just sharing ideas about getting out of debt, goals, dreams, and stuff like that. So he's talking, and he was like, well, you know, I owe X amount of dollars on my car, and God said, pay it off. Huh? Now, mind you, my biggest seed at that time was $100. And that was 4 figures. And he's still talking. God said, pay it off. I said, huh? So I ignored it for about a month or so, and then I finally gave it to him. Long story short, when I lost my job, I got a phone call. Said, we heard about what happened. Say, tally up all your bills, give me a call back. I said, excuse me? Like, tally up all your bills, mortgage, life insurance, car payment, whatever you got, let me know, call me back, and hung up the phone. So I was like, oh my God. So I actually calculated everything up. They paid our bills for like 6 months.
Wow.
I woke up in the middle of the night. I said, that's why God told me to sow that seed, because I had to give him something in order to get what I needed that I didn't know I was going to need 6 months down the road. So when you think you don't have, you have. It's just about knowing what you have and using that as an opportunity to get to your next level. Because a lot of times we look at it and everybody else, what they got, is saying, I don't have that. It's just about, what about the work that you do have? Just begin to put that in. Because all them shifts that I had, sis, the hurricane came through, wiped us out, flooded, thought we had done lost everything. And because even in your worst moments, you still have the ability to give. And giving unlocks other opportunities and other moments in your life, even when you think you don't have nothing left to give, but you always have something to give. And the water seeped in, and we got flooded out. Told her to go across town to your mom, take the girls, and I'll do, just try to do whatever I can. Came back the next day, mowed everywhere in the house. Everywhere in the house. Long story short, we ended up sewing furniture. When we bought a new house, got furniture back. Lady wrote us a check for $10,000. I've never seen God move like that before in my life. So if you don't believe in giving, this ain't that type of message, but I'm just God has let me shift after shift, but I had to give something before I had to go to my next level. We ended up losing the house in the short sale. I knew about the short sales before the crash in the market. I knew about all that stuff because God had already took me through it. Yeah. And so, but the work that I put in through there is through that loss in my life, I didn't sit still. I didn't know what to do. I just moved. Yeah. So a lot of times when we don't know what to do, we just sit still in fear of making a bad decision. Your worst decision is not doing anything at all. And so when I began to move around, I met a real estate guy, and the guy actually ended up paying me. I had just went through a conference talking about the art of negotiation, and I'm sitting at the table with this guy. The guy took me to lunch, bought me lunch, and then gave me information about real estate. Make that make sense? And so going through that process, he said, well, how much you want for the house? He said, because what we're going to do, I'll tell you the process, blah, blah, blah. I remember that. God brought it back to my attention. I ain't say nothing. I said, well, I'll tell you what. He said, I got to talk back with my partner. I'll get with you tomorrow. So I went home. I went in my prayer closet. I said, God, I want X amount of dollars. He called me back. Long story short, paid me X amount of dollars. So I took a little bit of money. I got mentored by one of the top 50 motivational speakers in the world, 𝗬𝗪𝕐𝗙𝗀𝗪𝗏𝗂𝘃𝗀𝗔. Went through his program. And it was there Shift Motivations was actually birthed out. And because when God was showing me what he was doing with my life, when I went from the loss of the house, I was able to bounce back. I ended up losing my car because finances was tight. I got into the life insurance industry. If you know anything about the life insurance industry, but them chargebacks will kill you. It's good when the commissions are coming in, it's good. But when they start making a payment on that policy, and you got to write that check back, it don't feel so good. And, you know, I lost cars. I lost. You know, I ended up having to file through bankruptcy, bouncing back. So when we was on the podcast, I said I got a PhD in comebacks. You name it, I probably came back from it. And so God used a lot of that when he said shift motivations and helping individuals embrace the change necessary to create momentum for success. I said, that's my life. I eat, sleep, and breathe that. I ain't even really got to study for it. But I know the work that you have to put in. And in that, and I'll close out with this, during that time where we lost the house, the worst period of our life, 2 years, it took us to get our life back just in that phase. 2 years, we was out of place. Because you couldn't even get a contractor to look at your house for 6 months. Just to look at your house, not even to start repairs on your house. And so we was living with her mother-in-law, well, my mother-in-law, her mom at the time, and God spoke the title of my first book. Like, can you imagine being in a situation like that and God telling you to write a book on faith and finance? Like, you funny. Like, you really got a sense of humor. Like, because I learned a lot of stuff through the finance industry. They used to call me 𝗪𝗏𝗏𝗂𝗏 when I was growing up. In my younger years in ministry, they used to call me 𝗪𝗏𝗏𝗂𝗏 because I had such an astute wisdom that God gave me of scriptures through finance and things of that nature. And so God spoke my first book into existence during the worst period of my life. And during that worst period of my life, I birthed that book out. And this is what God was doing. It wasn't about the book. It was about what you had in you. Because that book started other books. Little boy from Haines City, Florida, Oakland, matter of fact, in the neighborhood where everybody know everybody. You know, and so he was showing me that this is just something that's in you that I need you to see. And once I began to write that, then it opened up doors for other stuff. So a lot of times we're looking at the current door, and that's really not the door that God's trying to get you through. He's just trying to get you to walk through that door. It can look raggedy. It can look like it's hanging on hinges. But at the end of the day, God is telling you to walk through that door, and on the other side of that door is the destiny that I got for you. So that's been my whole life, just coming back from shift after shift, to just learning how to adapt from calamity and being able to move forward in what God has called and purposed us to do.
Good stuff. Thank you so much. Thank you, thank you, thank you. And then last but certainly not least, Sierra, I did not even read half of your bio. You are definitely a trailblazer. You are a powerhouse who's definitely putting in the work on a lot of fronts, from the books, from the philanthropic work that you do that I know you are probably most proud of. You are a mother. You are definitely, listen, why did we not mention the talk show? Like, you are definitely a legit talk show host now, among other things. But through it all, what do you consider to be your comeback story?
Ooh, that's a good one. That's a good one. What's up, Polk County? What's up?
I know that's right. I know that's right, Sierra.
Because I came all the way from Orlando, and I want to make sure I'm in the right room. Am I in the room with people who believe that they can achieve? Yeah. People who believe? All right, because that was an hour drive. And I just want to say thank you so much, Jazz, for thinking of me. When you DM'd me that day and you gave me that phone call and you told me your vision, I said, you know what? I'm going to show up for her because I believe in overcoming opposition. It has been my bounce back story. And so when I think of one, honestly, I can't think of just one comeback story because to keep it real with y'all, I've been coming all along. I can name a million different situations that has tested my resilience, but I'm just a girl from West Orlando who has grown up in low socioeconomic conditions, and I don't look like what I've been through because I've always been able to see beyond my circumstances. So there hasn't been one situation I've had to bounce back from, because if we're keeping it all the way honest, when you come from places where I've come from, you just have to keep coming all along. And I don't believe in going back. So I'm not coming back to what has broken me, because once something breaks, it's impossible to piece it back together perfectly. There's always going to be cracks and shatters. So instead of trying to come back to normal, I've always believed in creating a new normal for myself. I'll take the broken pieces, I'll only pick up what I need from my next season. So have I experienced poverty? Absolutely. I grew up in a home, all of my uncles were legitimate crackheads. Like I would come home from school and have to hide my ink pens because they would use them to freebase crack. I grew up in conditions that no child should ever have to experience, but I don't complain about it and I don't feel bad about it. I don't demonize my family because I truly believe that God has called me to be an example of what is possible when God places his hands on somebody. He's given me an incredible purpose. I started out in law enforcement, corrections. I'm hailing from Florida A&M University.
Yep.
Rattlers in the building. After graduating, I moved to Arizona where I worked as a juvenile probation detention officer. I came to Orlando. I did Orange County Corrections. It wasn't for me. The uniform was too big. I hated being in jail for 12 hours a day. But what I did while I was there was I started to really write a vision for myself. And I launched this conference called Dare to Dream Conference. And the first time I held it, I was able to get my whole entire city behind me, the mayor. It was a sold-out conference. We did Dare to Dream for a couple of years, and then life continued to evolve. I went from writing my own book to coaching authors on how to write their books, to ghostwriting books for other authors, to publishing books for other authors, to now structuring strategic partnerships for celebrity clientele. And so I didn't always know exactly what I wanted to do, but I always knew who I wanted to be. I wanted to be a woman who was able to come back to her community and give back. There's one book that I would say changed my life. It was right after my grandfather had passed away. I was very close to my grandfather. The day before he passed away, we were at my cousin's wake, and he had passed away from cancer. And on the morning of his funeral, my grandfather passed away, and so you can just imagine how devastating that funeral was. And I come from one of those old school country Pentecostal families where everybody was on the pallet on the floor at my grandmother's house, and all of my cousins and siblings, we grew up like sisters and brothers. And so it was a very devastating loss, and I experienced compound grief. And during this time, I was facing eviction because the conferences that I was holding that were sold out, it took everything in my bank account. And so I was literally broke after these conferences because I was pursuing a dream, but I didn't really have a plan, a profit plan behind it. I was just passionate, but I wasn't profitable. And so I had to really pivot and learn the power of creating a strategic business plan to back the dream. And so you don't go out here and you're pursuing things and you're passionate, then you're coming home empty. So compounded grief. Being broke and heartbroken at the same time, I would not recommend it. It's like the worst thing ever. But it's so crazy how God works, because in that time I remember just being completely devastated. I was with my grandfather an hour before he passed away. Had no idea that I was going to get the phone call that he passed. I was extremely devastated. And for the next 3 years, it felt like life was moving. And this is the duality of God's grace, where grief and grace can coexist at the same time. Because while I was navigating grief, God was opening doors for me in ways that I could have never even imagined. There's this one book that really changed the course of my life. It's called 𝗷𝗿𝗄𝑖ng the 𝗍𝑒𝑙 by Napoleon Hill. And in that book, he talked about two things that really stuck with me. He talks about how the enemy uses fear to keep people small, to keep people from daring to dream, but God uses people. And there are a certain amount of people who don't allow fear to keep them small. You'll feel the fear and you'll go anyway. Life will throw you a curveball and you'll throw it back. And I believe that I'm one of those people, because when things got hard, I never stopped. I just kept going. And during that duality of grace and grief, I'm navigating devastation. I was broke, but then God sent a person. He'll always send somebody. God sent this lady. I didn't know that she was a wealthy, influential woman at the time. I was just writing books, and I was super excited to get a client. I think I only charged her $2,000 at the time. And so it was one phone call that changed my life. She gave me a call. She was going through a divorce, and she needed someone that can tell her story. And I was a communication strategist and a really great writer and a really great orator. And so she was telling me her story, and I was telling her what her book was going to be about. And so she invited me to come to her home in Miami. So I'm like, okay, I have nothing better to do. Like, I'm probably going to be getting evicted anyway, so let me go ahead and close this $2,000 and make it do what it do. So I get to Miami, and I pull up, get off the Uber, and it's a huge mansion on the Venetian Isle, a waterfront mansion. And so I go in, and she takes me upstairs. She says, this is going to be your suite while you're here. Beautiful writer's suite. This woman exposed me to wealth. She exposed me to ways of living that I could not even imagine, right? And so I remember reading 𝗷𝗿𝗄𝑖ng the 𝗍𝑒𝑙 on my way back home. And I would go back and forth. I'm riding around in her Rolls Royces. I'm driving her Lamborghinis. I'm literally sleeping in her mansion. She's introducing me to her high-end network. I'm walking into events being sponsored by Rolls Royce. Like, life is really happening. She would dress me in her fancy clothes, and then I would come back home, and I got an eviction notice. I'm like, you know what, God? And this book, Outwitting the Devil, right? And it hit me one day like a ton of bricks. I still get so emotional when I think about it because I heard the Holy Spirit so clear. And it said, I'm going to use you to disrupt generational poverty.
Yeah. Yeah.
I'm like, me?
Yeah.
Who, me? Did you see the eviction notice on my door? Who, me? And that's how God works, because the very thing that is causing you so much pain, the very thing you've had to fight your way out of, is the very intersection that God will use you to make an impact and to make a mark. And I'm so proud to say that my nonprofit, of all the things that I've done, my proudest accomplishment is raising beautiful, brown, healthy girls who don't have to grow up and heal from childhood trauma because they live healthy lives. My baby girl is here with me today. But the second thing I'm so proud of, you guys can give it up for my
Yeah.
She's a straight A student, National Junior Honor Society.
She's a straight A
artist,
student.
all the things, my girl.
Yes.
But the second thing I'm so proud of is that my nonprofit, Limitless Cares, in collaboration with a bunch of other grassroots initiatives in my community, we've been able to feed over 4 million families. I was one of those kids who used to be hungry. I literally grew up on
You gotta clap it up
Section
for
8.
that. You gotta
We
clap
can
it up for that. Over 4 million
4
families.
million families. And I was the girl who was the recipient of food stamps. I lived on Section 8 my entire life growing up. We lived in literally every neighborhood in Orlando, baby, we lived there. If they had a Section 8 voucher, we were there. And so I'm so proud to be able to come back to my community after I've been able to go out amongst these millionaires and these celebrities. Like, I literally was able to sit with Eric Yuan. If you guys don't know who that is, he's the CEO of Zoom. And I created a fireside chat with him and Timbaland, where they were able to talk about paradigm shifts and how to navigate creativity in a crisis, because there are certain people, when crisis is coming, if you guys are paying attention, our country is in crisis, our world is in crisis on a global scale, but there are certain people who take that crisis and they figure out, now what are we going to do next and how do we pivot? And I remember getting those two to sit down and have a conversation, and they talked about how they used a time when the world was in crisis during the global pandemic, and that's when Zoom took off. Because people were at home, we weren't able to move around, and so global interfacing became the #1 way that people were able to communicate and connect. So Zoom took off in 2020, during the time when the rest of the world was on pause and people were panicking. And then Timbaland with Versus, 2020, we were all sitting at home, and Versus took off. They made $100 million after being able to, license that and sell that. The point is, when you think you're in a crisis, maybe it's an opportunity for God to use you to be creative, to figure out what can you do next, what's next. And so that was a really long way of saying, I can't say I'm coming back, baby. I'm gonna just keep on coming.
You're gonna keep going.
I'm gonna just keep coming. That's it.
I say it's multiple comebacks. I love that. And so you guys, all three of you, are showing and you're proving, what that work looks like, because we can't just live on our dreams. We can't just say what we want to do. We have to put some legitimate action behind it. Gerren, your story is one that is unique, but when you listen to it, it's like, huh? Because Gerren, a part of his story that he didn't tell you is that Gerren had a thriving career, and a meeting at a restaurant. And I know I'm telling your story because I know you craft it so well. I already know. He meets someone in the service industry, a waiter, at a restaurant. And he's so taken aback by how this person is handling he and his family with care. And it just took his experience, it elevated his experience at a restaurant, so much so that he's asking this waiter for advice. Like, how do you do your job? Because if I can package up the way that you've made me feel, that's something. That's something more than what I'm doing right now. He legitimately ended a career that he was in to start a janitorial business. And it is now a very profitable business. I don't want to tell your business, but it's in the millions. But just off of relating to someone that's waiting on him. and putting himself right at that eyes level of that person and just really genuinely making that connection and wanting to do for others, making others feel the way that that person made them feel. And so, Gerren, when you go through that, and you can morph it and you can beautify the story more than I can, but I asked you this question, but I just want to know what really you legitimately had to stop and put in the work. Like, you literally put in the elbow grease, you literally cleaned toilets and reflected, and you did all of this work through that work. So what did that do for you?
Yeah, so I'll clear up a little bit of that story. I didn't start, I quit my job to become a janitor, okay? I wanted to actually experience at a granular level what it is to serve people. I'm an educated guy. I just completed my degree. I still wanted to see what it was like to serve people at a granular level, see how the world interacted with me, and then see how I would interact with the world, having an education and cleaning your toilets. So it was an experiment that I started. I wanted to just see what it felt like, because again, I told you, I loved people. So by me going through that route, I learned a lot about how people would interact with me. They would look at me. I'm not typically dressed like a janitor would dress, and people would tilt their head. You don't look like a janitor. And I would ask them, well, what does a janitor look like? Because I wanted to shift the mindset. The people who clean your rooms at the hotels, the people who serve you at the restaurants, they are people with stories, amazing stories you just don't know. And if I could say thank you to that individual and change his life, change his perspective, because in the beginning, he was just kind of setting up the table. I said, hey, thank you. He was like, why would you say thank you to me? And I said, because you prepared a place for my wife and I to have dinner. If you didn't do that, we wouldn't sit here. So thank you. And he skipped to another table and he began to set it up and look at people with a smile on his face, and I got chills through my body. And I said to my wife, I want to do that again. So 20 years ago, because I've been running this business for 19, coming up on 20 years, 20 years ago, I had a dream of just creating thank you moments for people. That's it. So with me starting the business and building that business, thank you moments. I didn't even know when we made our first $1 million because I was just focused on thank you moments. That's it. That's who I am intrinsically. So every business that I've started, I have a fuel and distribution company with my brother back in the islands. All we do is create thank you moments. My coaching business, all I do is create thank you moments. I could show you a list of testimonials of people just saying, thank you, Gerren. Like, I never looked at it that way. Thank you, Gerren, for doing what you did here. Thank you, Gerren. That's all I do. So in the first panel too, where someone was wondering, like, how can I decide what business to start or what should I do? Like, all you have to do is find something within you, something within you. It could be very simple that you want to do, man, and you could start a business. If I was landscaping, if I was being a barber, I don't care. I would create another thank you moment and I'd still turn it into millions. Thank you. The most powerful words you can ever hear. Thank you. So, yeah. That's why.
Yeah. That's definitely why, yeah. I wanted to say, Sierra, in your journey, and then Michael, you chime in as well. When we say, you know, you have to do the necessary work, how do you know, how do you navigate to what the necessary work is, to what your goal is? How do you even determine that?
That's a really great question. I would say when you are clear about where you're going, what's necessary will be made evident as you begin to take another step. So you don't always know in the moment, but you just have to be willing to move your feet. And as you take another step, you say, oh, wow, okay, well, I wanted to start a publishing company. Well, because I took that step, research is available. And I said, you know, I guess I got to create a 𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏 account and learn how to establish ISBN numbers. I got to create a relationship with the Library of Congress, and so I can create copyright for my clients. I need an editor, so let me find out who I can bring on to help me edit, because I'm only one person and this company is growing. What about a formatter? How do I build a team? How do I keep a team on board? How do I, you know, decide which payroll system I'm going to use? Oh my gosh, look at these payroll taxes. How do I stay compliant with payroll taxes? oh my goodness, how do I keep my team motivated when we are not hitting our numbers and we are experiencing those ebbs and flows? And so when you are in motion, it's going to be clear what's necessary because you're going to hit a roadblock. And then that'll be very clear about what work you need to do because now you got to climb this roadblock. And so if you're just sitting back trying to figure it out, you're never going to figure it out. You learn in motion. I'll give you a prime example. When we were in the police academy, they taught us all this training about how to take a bad guy down, how to take a bad guy down. I want to tell you guys, if you guys try those moves in the jail for real, you can be the whole get back, 2 steps back turn, you're going to get mopped. So it's just things that you learn in action. Like you can have a theoretical understanding of something, but it becomes practical when you are in practice, when you actually just start. So I would say just start. It's going to be evident because you're going to hit a roadblock. Yeah. And then it's like, okay, now what is this? Open the door, and there's your lesson, and this is the work that you need to do. Yeah. And it's ever evolving. It's ever evolving. For me, the work that was most difficult for me was understanding boundaries. Yeah. Like having boundaries as someone who's extremely empathetic and compassionate and someone who's an extreme giver, and I always felt so compelled to give, and I had to learn, well, baby, you can keep some of that for yourself and not feel guilty for surviving. But when you're like the only one in the situation who has made it out, you always feel almost obligated to pour back, and I do that, and it makes me feel so good to be able to do that. But I had to realize that I was starting to give out of a sense of guilt, and that's when it's not aligned. And so the work for me has been learning to embrace goodness. And there's another book, I'm a reader, I'm a writer, I love books. So there's another book I want you guys to read. It's called, one is called The Big Leap, and the other is called Genius Zone. It's written by this gentleman by the name of Gay Hendricks. And so The Big Leap was a book that really, really helped me because he talks about how to break through your upper level. And you may say, well, what's my upper level? It's your capacity of success. And so you get here and you feel good and you've started the business and the business is growing, you're making some money and things feel great. You've been able to buy a bag, you bought the shoes, and then you hit a cap because you've reached your capacity to receive goodness. And that was a thing for me, especially people like me who come from extreme poverty. It's just like you have learned to survive off of crumbs and you get too satisfied too easily, but there's a whole cake available to you. Like, why do you only want a little crust? I had to change my mindset. I had to expand my capacity to receive goodness, understanding that number one, I deserved it. Number one, I was willing to work for it. And then there are certain things you deserve. You don't have to deserve goodness. Like, goodness is just out there. You can receive it. And so I had to change my mindset around what it meant to receive. And then once I started to receive good things, because I had all these amazing people coming into my life, I had opportunities to work with your favorite celebrities. And I wasn't just working for these people. Like, I'm literally sleeping in their mansions. I'm literally being served by their waiters. Like, they're treating me like family. And I had to continually expand my capacity to receive goodness. And it's a real thing, because when you're so used to not having anything, learning to embrace goodness becomes a challenge. And so this book called The Big Leap, it talks about getting to your genius zone. And so you have things that you're good at, things that you're great at, things that you're excellent at, but then there's this genius zone, which is like your sweet spot. And it's the thing that you do best with the least amount of effort. You're just good at it. And then if you can make money off of it, oh baby, you in your genius zone. And so getting there requires a big leap. I had to break through my upper level because I was doing good, and then I was doing great, and then I was doing excellent. I was winning awards, like all the things. But how do I get to that next level, my genius zone? And it was truly just expanding my capacity to receive goodness.
That's awesome. Good. Okay, did y'all take down those book names? So they want to hear it one more time.
The Big Leap, and then the second one was Genius Zone, and the author is Gay Hendricks. Such a good book to read.
You got it? Okay, all right. All right, Michael, what do you say? How do you know what's your necessary work? How do you know how much work to do?
In essence, to come behind that, just thinking about the question and looking at my life, and in essence, it's like, can you become what you need? And what I mean by that is, when I wrote my first book, I knew a little bit about business, not a whole lot, but I knew a little bit. I knew I needed a platform. So it's like, start where you are with what you have. Because I'll explain this to the kids a lot. A lot of times, this is how dreams work. your dreams is way up here. Everybody have these big goals and they have this dream. I say, be yourself an invisible funnel, or get your journal and write it down and draw it if you're a visionary person. I say, y'all have these big dreams. You want to make it to the NFL, NBA, or start business, whatever it is. You have this big dream. I say, but it stays there because you don't funnel it down. Because I say, funnel it down and create the steps that's going to lead you to that big dream. And so when I knew that I had to have a platform, and I'm one that's like, anything that you do, get everything out of it, no matter what it is you do. So it's finding out about the work that it takes to get what you need done. Stop looking at what everybody else is doing. Because I'm a visionary person, and people that know me personally, they say when Mike got his mind made up, he's like a pit bull. You got to pry him off of with the jaws of life. That's me. Because you're not going to tell me how to think. You're not going to tell me what to think at the end of the day. And because what happens is, if you have a vision, like I'll say this real quick and then address this. And it was by a very well-known person. Don't start a podcast if you don't have an audience. If you don't have this, if you don't have that. I'm like, why? If the goal for that person is to start a podcast, if they only touch one person's life, they were successful in what they were supposed to do. Just because they don't have 1 million followers doesn't negate the fact that they desire to start a podcast. So we take on other people's mindsets and other people's dreams, and therefore we lose and we never pick up ours and what God intended for us to do. Yeah. And so I had dreams to do a podcast way long before the wave came. So my brother is a Christian hip hop artist. He was already on 2 podcasts, plus traveling. My other brother that's from another mother that's on the podcast with me, his schedule was crazy. My schedule was crazy. So when the window came open for us to kind of get together, it was not to say, man, everybody's doing it. It's like, no, this is something that I wanted to do. And if I do it for a year, 6 months, at the end of the day, that's something that I wanted to do. And so, but I had to learn how to become everything that I needed, because I didn't have the money to pay a graphic artist consistently. I didn't have the money to do marketing and sales. So I had to become that stuff. But it came through trial and error, and it came through a lot of frustration. Because when I put on my personal event season, trying to barter, hey, I'll do this for you if you do this for me. And so I found a graphic artist that would do that for me. And the first year he did it, I had a youth conference, man, people came from all over the county, and they came. He did my graphics, marketing designs, everything. And I created an ad for him so that, he gave me something in exchange for his work. And so he agreed for the second year. So the second year, I hit him up. He was like, yeah, I got you, Mike. I couldn't find him. And I kept calling him. He never picked up. So my brother was like, hey, bro, you can learn how to do graphics by doing this right here. Go to this website right here, do this. Right. I said, for real? I said, bet, you ain't got to tell me twice. So guess what? I never studied graphics, none of that stuff, but I had to become what I needed. Yeah. So at the end of the day, I learned how to do graphics. And guess what? That led to me learning how to do websites. So everything that I've done up to this point is like God has positioned me. I knew that I was supposed to own my own business. And God allowed a preacher to speak that over my life, and I heard it, and I took heed to it. And I held on to it because it resonated with my spirit. How it was going to happen wasn't my concern. How it was going to come to play, I didn't know, but I had to become what I needed at the time. So business owners, they have particular mindsets. They think differently, they act differently, they move differently. So I had to learn that about myself, that was part of my makeup. So once you learn who you are, then you have to pave the road to get the fullness out of who you are. And so I found myself becoming the graphic artist, the sales guy, learning about certain tax strategies and things. I didn't get deep into it, but I learned about all of those things. And so everything that I was becoming as a CEO, God allowed me to experience. So never negate the hard place, never negate the experience of the work, saying that it's too much. No, because your success and what you're looking for is on the other side of too much. And so when you acknowledge that, and when you acknowledge that and you begin to put that into activity, then you're going to be on the other side of it. It's just, I'm a real simple guy, sis. I'm a principle guy. Yeah. I can teach you strategy, but his strategy may work for him, but it may not work for me. But anybody can apply a principle. at the end of the day. And hard work is a principle that everybody can apply. At the end of the day, you're gonna come out better, you're gonna come out bigger, you're gonna come out stronger, and you're gonna know more than you ever thought you could know. Your capacity to learn is gonna increase. God's sending me back to school right now, 30 years later. So I'm in a pivot right now. So it's and I'll close with this. If I can say anything, if you don't hear nothing else I said out of this conference, know who you are. The problem is we don't know who we are. We don't know who we are because his story is not my story is not her story. Everybody has a journey. Pay attention what your journey looks like. When she did my first book release party, she didn't want me to have no hands in it, her and my mom. Didn't know it. What I said in the beginning, success leaves clues, pay attention. They found an old picture of me. I was about 5 or 6 years old in a 3-piece suit in front of my mom's car with a mic in my hand. I was the quietest kid in class. If you didn't take roll, you didn't know I was in there. But I do this and I travel and I go all over the place with a mic in my hand, outside of ministry, inclusive of ministry. And I don't say that to be right, but when I started peeling back the layers of my life, I'm like, even all of the calamity stuff, it had purpose in my life, but I had to turn it into purpose. So I couldn't be afraid to run away from the work to overcome obstacles just so the purpose can shine forth. Because it's all leading up to something. It don't make sense in the moment, but it will when it comes together because I'm still living in my moment. I'm still living in my coming. Like you said, I'm constantly coming. Like I'm in a pivot right now, going to school 30 years later. Why? Because God told me to. I'm not asking you 50 million questions right now. I'll wait for the time to come when it comes to see where it's going to come. But at the end of the day, you can't run away from the work. Just look for it. Just look for it. Look to do what you can do with what you have and stay focused. Because as soon as you take your eyes off what you're supposed to do, I don't care about what this guy's doing. I don't care about my goal is, you know what, if it takes me 10 years, guess what? I'm going to get, what E.T. say? It took me 12 years to get a 4-year degree. At the end of the day, just don't be afraid to put in the work and know your capacity and that's knowing who you are.
That's good. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Yeah, we can pick it up for that. So we're gonna round it out and close out this panel because I do want everybody to be able to mix, mingle. We're gonna turn up with the R&B portion of it. But Gerren, if you could give us a closing remark for this panel on doing the work, what would you say? What advice would you give?
Yeah. I really like what you said. So I wrote a book called Fast Track Your Calling: How to Fuel Your Drive with Every Assignment. The reason behind that was a lot of times we think because of the job that we're in, it's like, nah, what I need is on the other side of X. Like we think it's outside of us. We think when I get the next job or when I quit my job and become an entrepreneur, that's when things are gonna get better. There's no there. You're always gonna be stretching yourself. You're always gonna be growing if you're that growth-minded individual. I want you to know that wherever you are right now, if you have a 9-to-5 job, a part-time job, or what have you, everything that you need for your next step is right there. You just have to open up your mind to it. He just talked about like being able to do doing the work. When you start to know what your superpower is, you're gonna look around you and all of a sudden you're gonna see opportunities. It's gonna be the promotion that you can get, or you can serve somebody, or you can answer this problem, solve this problem. Everything you need is right where you are. You just have to take the step. And when you take the step, another step is going to present itself. And then another step is going to present itself. And you might find yourself finally getting that business started. But when you start the business, it's all about your character. It's not about the business. It's not about the money that you make. It's all about your character. In the end of time, God is going to ask, like, did you do what I asked you to do? Right. Did you serve the people that I asked you to serve? Right. The money that you make is going to burn. You can't take it. Money comes and it goes. We've had money, and I've lost a lot of money. I've been, I don't want to say robbed. People have stolen money from me, hundreds of thousands of dollars, right? Employees have stolen from me. Clients have stolen from me. You make the money, you lose the money, but your character is what God is after. So if there's one thing that I can leave you with, man, all of this whole lab that we're in called life is about character building. Take advantage of that with every assignment you're given. You were called to walk in the room, so walk.
Absolutely. Good stuff. Good stuff. Good stuff. Before we do wrap it up and we take our picture, I want to say congratulations to Sierra as well. Sierra, you didn't mention this, but you just started law school, right? Or are you going to?
I haven't started law school yet, but I'm going through the admissions process.
So we are going to already say congratulations, Sierra. Because that's a dream of yours as well, right?
Yes,
and so I'm looking at the people you guys have had. Now you've had 9 panelists. You've sat through panel 1, 2, and 3. I want you to be able to definitely tap into them, network with them, have a great time, and I just want you to give a final round of applause to panel 3.